October 11th, 2025. The outskirts of Nova Basan, northern Ukraine. A calm autumn morning turns violent in seconds. Russian T-90 tanks and BMP-2 infantry vehicles storm the Koryuka corridor under a barrage of 300mm Smerch rockets. Ukrainian forces answer instantly with guided missiles streaking from launchers. PZH-2000 howitzers pounding the line. And FPV drones armed with PG-7 warheads sweeping low through the treetops. Helicopters dive from the clouds, and a bridge erupts beneath advancing armor. The air fills with shockwaves and smoke. A battle is unfolding across land, air, and electronic warfare. But why here? And what made this ground worth gambling everything for? At 8 a.m., Ukrainian forward observers detected a rapid armored advance cutting through the Koryuka corridor near Cherniv Oblast. The movement showed 9 Russian T-90 tanks supported by 14 BMP-2 infantry vehicles and 2 BM-30 Smerch launchers positioned roughly 6 miles behind the line. Their route led directly toward a rail bridge essential to Ukrainian logistics. Command relayed coordinates within minutes. A HIMARS battery northwest of the zone received the data and launched 6 guided missiles. The first missile struck the lead T-90, detonating its ammunition and scattering burning fragments across the road. The blast wave reached nearby houses and cracked their windows. PZH-2000 howitzers began firing 155mm rounds, targeting the BMP column to slow the approach. Explosions churned the soil and sent debris over the tree line. Moments later, FPV drones armed with PG-7 VL warheads swept in at low altitude, selecting vehicles at the column's rear. Each hit disabled another layer of support. The Ukrainian action wasn't meant to destroy the force outright. It was an engineered delay, or should we call it a controlled counter, that forced Russian armor into a corridor already mapped for precision fire. By 10:15 a.m., the Russian column reached the southern edge of Nova Basan. The streets narrowed, pushing tanks and infantry vehicles into a predictable single-file formation. Ukrainian engineers had anticipated this movement. Days earlier, they buried directional mines, shaped charges, and seismic sensors along culverts and intersections. At 10:22 a.m., one T-90 triggered a buried sensor. The shaped charge punctured its side armor and ignited the internal fuel. The explosion lifted debris across the street and disabled 2 nearby BMP-2s. Seconds later, PZH-2000 howitzers opened fire, raining 155mm shells on the immobilized vehicles. 5 more were hit, and their treads were shattered. The blasts ignited fuel drums and ammunition, producing flames visible from the town's outskirts. At 11 a.m., Russian Ka-52 helicopters approached at low altitude, releasing unguided 80mm rockets toward suspected Ukrainian positions. Poor telemetry and dense terrain caused most to miss. Hidden Ukrainian Stinger teams fired 4 missiles. 1 helicopter was struck in the tail rotor and crashed into a building. By 11:30 a.m., Ukrainian BTR-4E carriers moved east, launching tandem warheads at the remaining armor. Russian troops tried to regroup, but drones hovered above, marking every position for artillery correction. If you were there, would you keep holding your position or fall back before the next wave? At 12:15 p.m., Ukrainian reconnaissance relayed coordinates for a Russian ammunition depot positioned 5 miles behind the line. Seconds later, 2 HIMARS batteries launched precision salvos. The first impact created a crater 45 feet wide, shattering nearby roads. The second struck directly on stored munitions. It sent black smoke hundreds of feet into the air. Shockwaves rippled through surrounding villages, shaking rooftops and breaking windows. 10 FPV drones followed, each equipped with PG-7 VL warheads and guided through live video feeds. They weaved through radio interference and struck 5 BM-21 Grad launchers before reloading was complete. The resulting explosions sent burning fragments across open ground. By 1 p.m., the Russian offensive had slowed. Many vehicles were disabled or trapped within narrow streets littered with wreckage. Ukrainian artillery adjusted elevation and began shelling the immobilized armor from long range. Drone footage revealed crews abandoning positions and infantry attempting to retreat through alleys already marked for fire correction. The ambush had achieved its purpose as the Russian spearhead had stalled under precision pressure from multiple directions. For the first time that day, the initiative shifted. Ukraine had begun turning defense into counter-offensive control. At 1:10 p.m., Russian BM-30 Smerch systems, hidden 7 miles north, launched a full salvo of 12 rockets. Each 300mm missile carried cluster warheads designed to saturate a 100-yard radius. The detonations tore through the tree lines and trenches where Ukrainian artillery crews had been operating minutes earlier. 2 PZH-2000s were hit directly, their aluminum hulls torn open by submunitions. Survivors crawled out under falling debris, calling for medics through static-filled radios. The Ukrainian counter-battery team found the launch coordinates within minutes. 2 HIMARS units behind a nearby farming complex fired 4 guided rockets. The impact produced twin explosions that consumed the entire Smerch battery. The blast threw fuel trucks sideways, leaving only craters and twisted steel. At 1:25 p.m., Ukrainian Su-27s appeared low over the horizon. Their engines were vibrating through the valley. Those released chaff to mask the approach of Su-30 strike jets flying beneath radar. Moments later, Kh-31P anti-radar missiles streaked toward Russian S-400 systems. 2 arrays literally disappeared in orange fire, one torn completely from its platform. Every second over that airspace was survival for those Ukrainian pilots. At 2:10 p.m., Russian MiG-31 interceptors scrambled from an airbase 45 miles east, racing to regain air control. Their climb was detected by Ukrainian radar operators within seconds. MiG-29 fighters launched in response, sweeping west to intercept before the Russian aircraft reached altitude. Flares cut through the haze as both sides closed the distance at supersonic speed. The dogfight was brief and violent. One Ukrainian jet took a direct hit and spiraled downward, trailing smoke. Its pilot ejected seconds before impact. 2 MiG-31s broke formation and pushed to retreat after their radar links were disrupted by electronic jamming. On the ground, Ukrainian anti-tank teams advanced through irrigation ditches, moving under the cover of drone surveillance. They closed within 200 yards of a T-90 column and fired RPG-29 rounds in succession. One missile struck clean through the side armor, triggering an ammunition detonation that lifted the turret from its chassis. The blast echoed across the fields, followed by a kind of silence that makes soldiers hesitate before breathing again. Can you tell us, if you were pinned under that sound, would you keep pushing forward or wait for the next impact to decide for you? At 2:45 p.m., the Ukrainian command authorized the launch of a long-range loitering drone cluster from a concealed forest strip 8 miles west of the engagement zone. 10 fixed-wing drones lifted into a gray sky. Each was carrying a 4-kilogram shaped charge and a fiber optic guidance tether for real-time control. Besides, their flight paths were programmed to scan Russian supply chains, forming beyond the combat line. Minutes later, drone operators identified a logistics site holding 6 ammunition trucks and a fuel trailer. Operators paused a bit, only to make a manual confirmation before the attack. At 2:58 p.m., the drones descended one after another, cutting through the clouds. The first detonated inside a fuel tanker, creating a shockwave that ruptured the ground for 100 feet in every direction. The explosion triggered a chain of secondary blasts that consumed the site in flame and black smoke. At 3:15 p.m., HIMARS battery struck a bridge 6 miles northeast, destroying it as Russian reinforcements attempted to cross. 3 armored carriers plunged into the river below, ammunition cooking off underwater. By 3:50 p.m., Ukrainian units had seized both access roads to Nova Basan. Their fields of fire overlapped perfectly. The encirclement was finally complete. By 4 p.m., the battle for Nova Basan had reached silence. Ukrainian units surrounded the town, cutting every route for Russian reinforcements. The air smelled of smoke and burned fuel. Black columns drifted upward where convoys had stood hours earlier. Twisted armor, collapsed walls, and shattered optics filled the streets. Ukrainian medics moved carefully through the debris, using broken doors as stretchers. Combat engineers cleared unexploded shells, working in pairs to avoid trip sensors. Drone operators who once hunted targets now scanned for body heat, searching for signs of life beneath rubble. A mobile loudspeaker repeated one line every 10 seconds. "If you are injured, do not move. Help is coming." The same message played in both languages. It was a rare moment of stillness in a fight built on perfectionism and destruction. At 6 p.m., commanders ordered a ceasefire. The map that once showed targets now displayed safe corridors. The battle had purpose, but its price was brutally visible in every shattered home. If you had to choose, hold the line for victory, or stop before the world turns to ash, what would you decide? War leaves behind questions no weapon can answer. Each strike influences history, but it also buries what once was home. If you believe stories like this must be told truthfully, through the eyes of those who lived them, share this video. And subscribe for more battlefield analyses, where every decision and every moment of courage still matters. See you soon on the next mission.